Want to just, for folks who do not know, there's a lot of attacks right now on curriculum across the country in general, especially Common Core. And in places like Texas and Arizona where they've tried to or are working on getting rid of the word slave in all the textbooks and turning it into indentured servants. To continue to, I'm gonna say it, whitewash history. They want us to get over it quickly, and they think that the way to do it is by erasing us completely from the book. I wake up every morning to trauma. That I see something every single day on social media that just reminds me that America does not want us to be black, and that if we're going to
education, I'm in an organization here with 100 black men, and we went to our superintendent recently and said, we want all the kids that all the men, the boys, that you are going to throw out of school. The ones that don't want to be here, that you don't want them here, give them to us, give us a room.
I want to just, for folks who do not know, there's a lot of attacks right now on curriculum across the country in general, especially Common Core. And in places like Texas and Arizona where they've tried to or are working on getting rid of the word slave in all the textbooks and turning it into indentured servants, right? To continue to, I'm gonna say it, whitewash history. They want us to get over it quickly, and they think that the way to do it is by erasing us completely from the book. Little do they know. So I think that that's important as we talk about curriculum, like what's being taught, who's writing it, and who's in charge of it is a part of the question. And so your question is, how do we make our own, right, for the spaces? I want to challenge you to look up the Baltimore Algebra Project. I want to challenge you, Baltimore Algebra Project. I don't talk fast, you listen slow. And, and also, shoot, what's it called? Shoot, it's not Education Trust. There's EdTrust, EDTRUST.org, and there's one more, and I'm forgetting what the name is, I'm blanking. But there are several groups, Dream Defenders, for example, from Florida, in Miami. There are multiple local organizations that we don't talk about often who actually have written their own curriculum already. I don't think we need to recreate the wheel. Sometimes before we ask the question, why are we creating it, we need to find out if people already did it, and that takes a lot of work. And we can't just Google it, because it's not always going to pop up. So I'm giving you the answer. There's a few other organizations who have already done that. The National Education Association, I know, has a Black Caucus as well. And I was working there at the time when we started writing our own curriculum in addition to that. Not to say that all of those things might be right or what you're looking for, but it doesn't hurt to look at that first and then pull from there. And then create what's adaptable to where you are, because there isn't one size that fits all. There's not one cookie cutter way of explaining all of those things. I think that the other thing is this. I think that there's a gap between how we train young black political operatives and understanding these words that we've used so far on the panel today. Independent expenditure. Y'all can't even tell me what the hell that means. What is a political operative, right? Like, how do you actually turn out voters? What does data mean? What does polling mean? And I'm learning that lesson very difficultly because I'm an Aries. I got a problem with authority. So I got these black men around me at the NAACP telling me what I need to understand. And I'm like, I know everything already. No, I don't. And I think that there's a gap, right? And so we have to figure out, in addition to the question you asked earlier, actually, this is what it makes me think of, why are people not running for office, or how do we get them to do it? People just don't know. And there aren't enough spaces that are larger enough that have the capacity or the resources to do it on a mass scale, so that's our job. That's not nobody else's job. So I'm glad you asked that question, and I hope those resources might be helpful. You heard of it? Shade Room? No? People shaking their head? Okay, don't follow it, because you're gonna get me in trouble. But there's an Instagram account called The Shade Room, and The Shade Room basically tells all the shade, all the tea. Politics, celebrities, entertainment alike. Everybody follows The Shade Room. And there's an alternative to that called Baller Alert. So you can follow either one. Look, he's about to follow, right. The Baller Alert. And Baller Alert has now shifted into talking more about culture and politics, and I'm grateful for their leadership because they have over 4.4 million followers on Instagram. Now, I know that if I do something on social media with the NAACP, I'm talking to my own audience. I know the people.
Good afternoon. My name is Alan Barrett. I'm a member of the proud Local 372, Department of Education employees. So as somebody who works in education and works with kids, one thing I haven't noticed that we are not talking about is how do we package this and create a curriculum for our kids? Because we have conversations about how young people don't understand the struggle, but when I walk into schools and I look at some of their curriculums, our curriculums doesn't match our experience. So what are we doing to package this and hold people responsible? And I want everybody to Google this. It's called the Expanded Success Initiative in New York City. And if people are looking to mirror what a culturally responsive education for our children looks like. This is the work that I'm doing, and I would like to see it across the country. But how do we put that together as a curriculum across the country? Because it can't just be in the labor movement. The fight for our children's minds is literally, we're at war. So what are we doing about that?
Any of the panelists?
Thanks for your question, and thanks for being a teacher. We don't see a lot of black teachers around, black male teachers.
I'm not a teacher.
Oh, my apologies, sir. Put some respect on your title. Thank you for your question. That's a great question. The first thought that I have is, I'm going to answer the question. People who follow Baller Alert, and some of them are ratchet. So I want to go talk to those people because those people are infrequent or low propensity voters. So I partnered with Baller Alert, and I said, hey, we want to live stream from your place. For 2 hours, we had a State of the Union for young people. 17,000 people tuned in. 17,000 people. So how are we going out to meet people where they are? I'm not asking people to come to the NAACP yet. I'm going to find out where they are and meet them where they're at. And I already know they're on this platform watching all the drama and all the shade. So now I'm going to go to them and talk about politics, right? If we continue to operate in that way, where we're altering the relationships of power, telling candidates what we want so that they have to respond to us, and then meeting people where they're at, we're going to continue the trend of growing the millennial vote in this country.
Wonderful. The sister at the mic.
Yes, Stacey Abrams' vote was stolen. What are we doing about voter suppression in Georgia, and how can we actively participate in what actions you're taking as far as voter suppression, because that sets the trend for the entire country in future elections?
We've begun to change laws. We've changed laws already where we've got another proposal, whereas if the Secretary of State is involved in an election, automatically they would be excluded from making decisions about that current election cycle. We will also have new voting machines that'll be coming to Georgia's biggest investment in voting machines in the history of this nation, for that matter, and it'll be similar to an ATM receipt, whereas you'll be able to get a receipt and it'll be filed, and if there's ever a dispute, and at random audits, what you should see should match up with how the electronic voting went. There are those who feel that we probably need a total paper ballot, but while it doesn't go that far, it is certainly 1,000% better than the system that we have now. But you know, I will tell you this. The true answer to your question is we just have to get involved and engaged and vote and elect folks who have our best interest at heart. I can tell you there was a candidate on the ballot for Secretary of State that had she won would have been an extraordinary candidate, and we wouldn't have had to be concerned about those kinds of things. Stacey Abrams lost by 52,000 votes, yet there were 200,000 black voters in the neighboring county that did not vote. And we can go on and on about those kinds of things. We had historic levels of voting, but we could have done better, and we wouldn't have to have these kinds of conversations. So we need to engage our folks, and our candidates need to do a better job of making sure they engage the voters to make sure that we are doing all that we can to win.
Thank you.
And I think Stacey, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I think she started an organization.
New Georgia Project.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and she's asking for donations to help fight not just the voter suppression efforts in Georgia, but in other places also.
Yeah.
So I plan to give a donation.
Actually, you go to Fair Fight Georgia right now and log on. She's doing some incredible things with that. There's a number of folks nationwide that are supporting her. As a matter of fact, Georgia was the #2 in the world for filming motion pictures and televisions and commercials up until they passed this draconian women's health care bill. And she's making this national tour now to get Hollywood not to withdraw their support for our motion picture, because you're essentially hurting the workers there. You're not hurting those folks who are making these crazy laws. And she would love to get your support on fairfightgeorgia.org.
Who works with the NAACP, and that is that often right? We're not where you are. And so the conversations when we try to engage the millennial generation are difficult for us. And in terms of the feedback that we hear from them and trying to connect with them so that we can engage them. And I want to know if you have current platforms that we can access so that we can redirect them to get these answers from a structure that's already in place.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your question. There are a lot of, I'm going to answer your question in a way that I hope is how you're framing it. I'm not going to ever direct anybody to try to get involved in social justice by going to a website or an Instagram page. So there is no one platform. What I will say is, whether it's the NAACP and the chapters that we have across the country, whether it's National Action Network, whether it's CBTU, whether it's a lot of our international unions also have young adult programs, right? Most of them. There's, Black Youth Project 100. There's Black Lives Matter, which actually has chapters across the country. The point that I'm trying to make is, if we can ask our folks, if we can't meet them where they're at, and we want them to get engaged, we have to at least show them where they can go to get engaged. And a lot of times, those spaces where they can go are already where they are. They're just not attending because they either don't know or because they don't have access to it. And so I think that closing that gap and getting folks involved is not just about asking somebody to come to a meeting or asking somebody to register to vote or asking somebody to apply for a job, but it's really about how do you institutionalize what they're learning and shift how do they create new knowledge in the spaces that they're in? And they can do that when they join organizations. I say this all the time across the country. We had the Image Awards in LA, and I said this on stage at the Image Awards. I said, in my belief and in my practice of organizing through the Midwest Academy, which is an organization in Chicago, I get trained by them. They say that in order for us to build strong movements, you need strong organization. That there has to be a way people can enter, learn, create, do new things, challenge themselves, get stuff wrong, take calculated risk, and then move out of it and make space for other people to come and do the same thing, right? And we don't do enough of that because we're not telling people where to go. And so it's not a website, it's not one blue answer that I can tell you guys, oh, everybody go to Follow Sean King, right? Which is Follow Sean King. But I can't say just go do one thing. Join an organization, right? And have those folks attend regularly. And our organizations can't be based off of meetings or Robert's rules or updates from committees. It has to be, what are you actually doing to engage people? How are you asking folks to volunteer? How many people in this room volunteered last year for the midterm elections in any sort of capacity? Raise your hand high, be proud. That's a good answer, good. That's most people in the room. Now, are we asking and bringing other folks with us who are under the age of 35?
Yes.
Raise your hand. Beautiful. That was like half of what just answered the first question. So we have to move people, right, to join those organizations and then ask them to come and volunteer with us. It's a process that happens over time. I didn't get on this stage because I did this work last year. Terry's known me for years, and I've been doing this work for the last 9, and now I'm on the stage to have a conversation about things that I've learned, things that are evidence-based, and things that I can give to you all to use so that we can do this better together.
Hassan, if I may,
sure.
For those of you who wish to get your younger folks involved in political office, what I would suggest to them is that to find some candidate, some issue that they're passionate about, and tell them to go volunteer in that campaign. They decide to run. Now, also, I have a business opportunity that remind me of the brother that was in education. I'm in an organization here with 100 black men, and we went to our superintendent recently and said, we want all the kids that all the men, the boys, that you are going to throw out of school. The ones that don't want to be here, that you don't want them here, give them to us, give us a room, give us some classroom, give us some resources, and we believe that we will be able to reach some of them. Now, we're not going to reach all of them, but we believe that we can, and you'd be surprised what these superintendents say. You mean to tell me you're going to take our worst students, the students that we're suspending, that you don't want around here? We'll be glad to give you the resources to try. And it's an amazing metamorphosis when you see some of these black boys are constantly in difficulty when they see other men that are about some things that they can talk to, and that see that our slogan is, they will be what they see. And when they see a different perspective, they become differently minded. Our youth are not just innately athletes and rappers and gangsters. That's what they see, so that's what they want to be. We show them doctors, lawyers, businessmen.
First black president.
First, they think differently, and therefore they will be different.
Yes.
We're going to have 3 more questions from the mic. The one right here, the brother in the front. And then 2, 3.
Donald Nesbitt, Local 372, New York City out of DC 37, proud NAACP member, proud CBTU member, and PAC chair, newly appointed PAC chair of District Council 37 in New York. And I am under 40.
Come on. All right, leader.
I hear the members behind me saying, and also the executive vice president of our local. Yeah.
All right.
So I'll be very brief, right? I think in our communities, we are a lot of times underappreciated, and when they think that they can win an election, they take advantage of us. When asked which committee did I want to be a part of, I said PAC, because I knew that we can make the elected officials would have to come through our union, and it would be a young person sitting there along with the other members of the screening committee, but they had to come through us, right, and answer some really tough questions. I think we need to start in our communities looking at numbers. They look at numbers when they want to win an election. They say, I got voted in last time by having 5,000 votes. Guess what? If we're going to organize, we look at those same 5,000 and say, I'll organize 10,000 to take you out if you're not addressing our issues. That's right. So I think we look at issues and we play with the numbers the same way they play with the numbers.
Brother, remember the 3 B's now.
Yeah. And the last thing that I'll say is that every meeting I tell our members, and I got this from one of the city council members in New York City, people pay attention to those who participate. Thank you.
Amen.
Brother at the mic in the back, and you'll be the last one.
Good evening. I'm Dominic Melvin, St. Louis chapter, CWA Local 6355, State Workers Union. My question is for one of my mentors, Mr. Claude and Tiffany. I had a chance to be in some trainings that you organized in St. Louis.
I know you very well. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you as well. My question is, a lot of people don't know what intergenerational organizing is. Can you please expound on how crucial it is in the work that we have to do coming up this year and next year? And what are some things that we can take back to our local chapters and organizations that we can implement so that we won't have the situations that we're in now?
That's a good question.
Wait, come back. Can we split this? So I'll tell people how to do it, but can you tell people why it's important? Because you asked me a rhetorical question. I know you know why it's important.
Well, thank you. But to break down that barrier of that we're trying to take over anything, or we're trying to replace anything, there's a space where we can all come on a common ground and work together and use the knowledge that you have and experiences that you have built over the years in the movement. We need to keep those things going, right? Because if we don't, we dead.
That's it.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right.
Plain answer. Y'all give him a round of applause for being a panelist today. It's good to see you. Thank you for the question, and I'm so glad you asked that, because you're right. I said it and I didn't explain how to get it done. I can give you 2 quick ones. The first is, a lot of times, intergenerational organizing for some folks will look like what the definition isn't. We'll say, oh, I'm going to bring my niece and my nephew to the meeting, and then there's like a youth workshop or there's a luncheon, and they'll come sit with me, but I'll never engage them in the conversation or ask them what they feel or how they think or what do they think should happen, right? The intergenerational organizing, to me, is like shared governance. It means that we sit together and we have discussions, not in a way that's condescending, not in a way, this is what the rule is that I call it yucking people's yum. So if I'm feeling yummy about something, I'm like, yuck, right? I'm not gonna yuck somebody's yum, where a young person might say, well, I think education should be free. Or I think they should wipe out all student loan debt. Now, you might not believe that, But if you yuck their idea and tell them that's not possible, that's a stupid idea, who gonna pay for it, who da-da-da-da, then you are killing the vision of the world that they're trying to create. That is the opposite of intergenerational organizing. It looks like allowing folks any age, whether they're 7, because I have conversations with my 7-year-old and my 9-year-old nephews, and they know Donald Trump is the worst thing that's ever happened to this country. They also have opinions about who they want to vote for next year, and they can't, right? But they're engaged because they're having these conversations at school, whether you like it or not. So how do we have this conversation with them in a space where we can learn together? One of the ways that I'm doing that at the NAACP, I'm doing it in a lot of ways at the NAACP, because there's a gap right now between 30-year-olds and 60-year-olds. They're not there. The NAACP's average age right now is 50 and over.
Wow.
Right? And so, and that's no secret. Derek will tell you the same thing. So we're figuring out and we're moving to more intergenerational organizing because, like you said, if we don't do it, we're dead.
That's right.
So and then again, it comes to the selfish thing, because some people are like, well, this is my position, my title, and I'm like, yeah, well, when you die in 20 years, then what? Who's trained to do what you're doing to take the position and take it to the higher level?
That's right.
Because then what happens is we're not training people, so then some person who doesn't know what they're doing comes in and then messes the whole thing up because they don't know anything else. You don't know what you don't know. So one of the ways I'm doing that at the NAACP is we have a national conference every year. Y'all come to it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It's in Detroit this year, July 20th to the 24th. Okay, hey. And, okay, so y'all you about to get some new news, okay? So the T is, I've had very tough conversations with my colleagues and the convention committee at the board of directors level. And over the last 6 months, I've been able to get a lot of support for this. We have these things that we call game changers. They're issue conversations. And we have sections in the convention where the adults meet to talk about all the game changers. And then the youth and college division will have all their young people in a whole different building in a hotel 2 blocks down, having the exact same conversations that the adults are having, but in 2 separate spaces. Intergenerational organizing looks like, why are we talking about the same thing in 2 different rooms? Why is there an adult table for Thanksgiving and a kiddie table for Thanksgiving, and we both talking about criminal justice? So this year at convention, there are no youth game changers. We're having the game changers with the adults.
All right.
So the adults were like, oh, well, you know, it's hard to keep their attention in the workshop. Well, that's your challenge. That doesn't mean don't have it together. That means figure it out. That means have young people on the panel too. That means have young people who are movement leaders in the discussion. Those are some of the ways we can do that. How are you doing it intentionally? Stop having them in a room on the side, in the corner, or having a separate table for them. Bring them into the discussion. Don't just ask the young people to come up and pray and then go sit back down.
Good for you.
That's not a role, right? That's an opportunity, but that's not a role. How do you have people who are on stage, like this conversation, where it's intergenerational, for the town hall discussion, and not have other workshops happening that are competing with this conversation so y'all can all be here, right? That's how we do intergenerational organizing. We start with the conversation happening in the same room at the same exact time.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
That's extraordinary.
Last brother at the mic.
How y'all doing? My name is Freddie Cuellar. I'm a local president from Houston for AFGE, and I'm also a candidate for Houston City Council District J. Tiffany, I had a question for you. Last time we seen each other, we were eating crab and snow crab, and remember in Houston and shrimp?
Oh,
after
yeah.
The event? Yeah, that was me. That was us. So as a progressively...
Y'all be nice to people. You never knew when you're going to run into them again.
Yeah. So as a progressively woke labor candidate from Houston, what would be your advice besides social media to mobilize high school seniors to vote my way?
Have you been to the high schools?
Yes, I have.
Have you been to the high schools after school is over?
No, I have not.
You need to go after school is over. When people are outside and they're leaving the school, and they're not just in the classroom. I think there's a few ways also, great question. There's a few ways I've been telling candidates. I've met with Cory Booker's folks, Senator Warren's folks, and Bernie Sanders has asked to meet with me. They want, you know, I'm a young black woman who just talks a lot. So they're like, we want to get your ideas on how to move young black people. And what I've told all of them and what I'm going to tell Senator Sanders is, if you can't just ask people to vote for you to believe in you, that you actually need other black, national, local, and statewide organizers who can validate you. So your poster, your face might be on your postcard, your face might be on a sticker or whatever it is, but if you're not getting other young people to validate for you when you're not in the room, you're not gonna win. So when you're not there, what are people saying about you and how are they convincing other people? Because in the age of social media, I feel like I'm 2 people removed right now from Michael B. Jordan. Right? I've slid into the DMs of some of my celebrity crushes. Because social media does that. You feel like you have access to people. So outside of social media, if I don't know you, but I know somebody who does know you, then I still feel connected, then I'm going to trust the source of the person that I know that's closest to me, right? And then if I trust them and they're telling me to vote for you, then I'm gonna vote for you too.
Yeah.
It's not just about convincing people by handing people stuff and giving people cute paraphernalia or swag. Who are the validators at the schools who you're calling in close? And then don't just do what this white man did in Alabama and use black women. You're not gonna do this, but I'm giving this to everybody else in the room. Of course not. Yeah. But I'm saying this for the people who are listening, not you. I'm talking to you though. Yeah. There's a white elected official who ran in Alabama, used all the black women to get him elected, and then when he got elected, he didn't hire none of them.
Right.
His whole cabinet didn't look like no black women that voted for him. So as you're building these relationships, make sure that you're not just using them to get you elected and using them as volunteers, but giving them opportunity afterwards to grow in your space, to grow with you in your cabinet, right?
So, Sister Tiffany.
So I've done this at every panel that I've been on now. In the world that we live in the world that I live in, I wake up every morning to trauma. That I see something every single day on social media that just reminds me that America does not want us to be black, and that if we're going to be black, that they will inflict violence on us in more ways than one. And I have to remind myself that in the work that I do, I can't get exhausted having to respond to every ambulance or catastrophe. That at the core of it, I have to have my own agenda that I'm always fighting for so that I don't get stuck in reactionary mode or always on defense. I want to give you in my last 1 minute and 30 seconds what my list is of my agenda. It might not be yours. Remember I taught you earlier, don't yuck my yum, so if you're not feeling it, keep it to yourself. The first I have is unions should be everywhere. Every job, every city, every state, union should be everywhere, that it should be a federal crime to do union busting, period. That I don't want any borders anywhere. I want free, yep, go ahead, just two people in the back. I want free education everywhere. I don't want any more prisons. Yep, we can talk about it later. I want clean, free, accessible water for every single person. I want to get rid of the Electoral College, period.
Yes, amen.
I don't want ICE to exist anymore that deports and separates families. I want universal voter registration, and I don't want voter day just to be on one day. I want it to be a week-long holiday that we all get off. I want to respect the women's right to choose what they're going to do with themselves, between the privacy of themselves and their doctor, and not a bunch of old white men telling us what we can and cannot do. I want free health care for everybody. And the last one's really important to me, but it doesn't reign above the others. I want free Wi-Fi everywhere. Look at the cameraman cheering. That's my list. I implore you to sit down, and it'll take time. Where are your values? Who are you? What do you believe? Why do you believe it? And what is your agenda? And once you stay grounded in that, you won't get trapped in the cycle of fighting always and following the ambulances and being reactionary. You'll remember why you're in this work in the first place, when it's so hard, when it's so difficult, when it's so exhausting, when you get burnt out and you feel like you're alone. You remind yourself of that list and what you're fighting for and why you're here.
Thank you, Tiffany. Brother Clark.